أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. And welcome back to Living the Quran through the Living Quran. In this series, we've been going over chapter number 53, Surah al-Najm, the chapter of the star. And more specifically, our current review is part number 7 under the theme of the true authority. And we've been reviewing verses number 24 through to 26. Now, in our previous discussion where we left off, we were looking at the fact that there is a topic of intercession being discussed in verse number 26. And as a reminder, God mentioned that how many angels are there in the heavens whose intercession shall not avail anyone except after God gives his permission to whomever he wills and approves of. And where we left off in our previous session was the fact that a question comes up into our minds about this topic of intercession. That is intercession nothing other than a sort of favoritism? And we want to present the answer today and look a bit more deeply into the topic of intercession, although there is a lot that can be said to corroborate and validate this belief from the point of view of the Quran. However, we just suffice with what Sheikh Mohsin Qiraati has mentioned in his Tafsir an-Nur. And so let us go through his discussion and answer this question. So in reality, the question which is that is intercession nothing other than a sort of favoritism? The answer to this question is never can that be the case. And the following reasons that we mention will hopefully further explain why this is our response. Point number 1 is that the person who is looking to have someone intercede for him with God, they would, through their actions and thoughts, they would be somebody who is worthy of being interceded for. Thus, this goes against favoritism, and therefore intercession really has rules and criteria before it can be realized. Point number 2 is that when it comes to intercession, the rights of others are not stripped away from them. However, in favoritism, most often than not, the rights of others are transgressed. Point number 3 is that the intercessor expects nothing back from the one whom he is interceding for. However, when it comes to favoritism, the one who steps in and engages in such political games always expects something back in return for their favor. The fourth point to understand the difference between favoritism and intercession is that the goal of the intercessor is to ensure salvation in the world to come for the one whom they are interceding for. However, the goal of favoritism is to provide material gain in this temporal world. And the fifth point that differentiates favoritism from intercession is that intercession is a means for upbringing and spiritual growth in this world. As the one seeking to benefit from the intercession, they would try to establish a strong spiritual connection with the close friends of God, the awliya, whom they are seeking intercession from. Now, in the verse, there is a phrase which God says, liman yasha. The meaning of this is whomever God or He permits, meaning in the terms of intercession. And in this verse under review, as it relates to the theme of intercession, we can understand this phrase, whomever He permits, to be understood in one of two different ways. The first way that we can understand this phrase is that whomever God wills, He will grant them the power to intercede for others. The second meaning, or the second way that we can interpret liman yasha, whomever He permits, is to say that this phrase means whomever God wills, He will grant to them the right to have others intercede for them. So as you can see, this two words can take on two different meanings depending on how the understanding, how a person looks at it and understands this word or this phrase of God in the Quran. Now, at this point, another question comes up, which is, doesn't the fact that one person can intercede for another person in the court of God lead to people being encouraged to sin? The answer to this question is that this, again, can never be the case. Because first off, it is not clear as to who will be allowed to intercede for others. And secondly, just as in the example of someone who has been poisoned, just because a medication is available to save such an individual, does this mean that we should now encourage people to ingest poison? Obviously not. Let us have a review of the concept of aspirations in the Quran and in the Hadith. Now, you'll recall in the beginning of this passage that we're looking at, part 7, in verse number 24, God says, "Am lil insani ma tamanna," or is the human being to have whatever he desires, whatever she desires? And so we want to look at this tamanna as aspirations, as dreams, things that we hope for in the future, to see how the Quran and the Hadith speak about this. So let us first look at the significance of having aspirations in life. Having aspirations in life is actually a factor which leads to change and progress. The noble Prophet Muhammad, may God's peace and blessings be upon him and his family, has been quoted as saying the following: "Lawla al-amalu ma radiyat walidatun waladiha wala gharasa gharisun shajaraha." Had there not been aspirations in the life of people, no mother would have ever breastfed her child, and no farmer would ever plant his crops. Prophet Isa, Prophet Jesus, peace be upon him, once saw an old man holding a shovel, plowing the ground in order to plant something. The Prophet of God, peace be upon him, said, "O God, take away the power of aspiration from this old man." Instantaneously, Prophet Jesus saw the old man throw the shovel aside and go to sleep. After some period of time, Prophet Jesus, peace be upon him, once again asked God to return aspirations to that old man. And again, instantaneously, he saw that man get up, pick up his shovel, and start to work on the fields again. Now, what about the topic of restraining our aspirations? Our aspirations must be controlled by 4 foundational pillars, which include the facilities, our abilities, certain conditions which must exist, and our spiritual capacities. And if these 4 foundational pillars are not in place, then the aspirations which we may have become nothing other than foolish dreams. And in this regards, Imam Ali, peace be upon him, has been quoted as saying that my greatest concern for you, for his followers, for the Muslims, is the following of your lower base desires and having long drawn-out aspirations that can never be attained. Now, we want to look at some other issues of aspirations. However, let's take a pause here, and in our 3rd episode in this section, we will come back and review the topic of negative aspirations, to look at some of the verses of the Quran and how God speaks about the fact that we should never take aspirations that can never be reached or attained. So again, we'll pause and we'll come back in episode 3 with a further discussion to better understand this concept within the teachings of Islam in the Quran and in the Hadith of the Prophet and his noble family. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.